Good evening, everyone. Wow, people joined in fast tonight. This is the fastest I think we've had this many people hop into the chat. 7 right off the bat. Wow. So we've got Dick and Nardine, we've got Jenny, we've got S.J. O'Connor, we've got Carolyn Livingston. Good evening, Mount Zion, she says, and good evening to all of you, whether you're at Mount Zion or not. If you haven't chimed in yet and said hi, please go ahead and do that. Kayleen's here as well. I think we're going to have a little bit of a shorter lesson tonight, folks. I apologize for that. Sean's here too. Holy Week was quite busy last week, and as you know, you did not get your lessons in your email on Friday this week. You got them today. That was when I got them done. So I basically spent the day getting ready for tonight, and I did the best I could. So my apologies. Just so many services last week, and I still have 2 podcasts to edit and get posted to the podcast site. So all in good time. So tonight we're hearing the story of Jacob and his literal sister wives. They are sisters, not his sisters, but they are sisters. This is sort of the first chapter in one of the most melodramatic stories in the Bible. Hey, Rob and Tony are here, and Mom Jean is here too. Excellent. Very melodramatic story, something worthy of a Jerry Springer episode. In fact, when I was young and crazy and more experimental in worship, one year we did a skit instead of a sermon on this story from the Bible, and I had the story of Rachel and Leah and Jacob play out as an episode of Jerry Springer. It was a lot of fun, and it got the point across. Thankfully, I had a congregation full of retirees who watched Springer religiously at the time. I don't know that I'd do that today, though. All right. So, of course, we're doing a survey of the Bible, one story at a time, Bible basics, so to speak. And each week I am sending out a paraphrasing, in some ways a condensed version of the story that we are doing. And tonight we are doing Jacob's literal sister wives. Gene says it sounds like it would have been fun. It was fun. It was fun because we had Rachel and Leah. We had their servants, and we had the empty chair in the middle like Springer used to. Then we had Jacob come out and sit in the middle, and I played the Springer character asking the questions, and the congregation knew exactly how to act like a Springer audience. It was fun. All right, let's go ahead and get into the story tonight, though. We are reading from Genesis chapter 29, and I skipped some verses here, so we've got 1 through 6, 9 through 23, 25 through 28, and 30. I took out some details that either were not pertinent to the plot or are things that were sort of details that were exposition for the next chapter in the story, and I think that the next chapter of the story can deal with those. All right, and I'm using the word chapter not in the sense that the Bible is broken into chapters, but in the sense that the story has acts to it. Hi, Tony. Welcome. All right, so let's get started, shall we? Listen for the word of our Lord. Jacob started his journey and went to the eastern lands. When he got there, he saw 3 flocks of sheep lying by a well. There was a large stone over the mouth of the well. When all the flocks were gathered, the shepherds would roll the stone from the well and water the sheep. Then they would put the stone back in place. Jacob said to them, "My brothers, where are you from?" They said, "We're from Haran." "Do you know Nahor's grandson, Laban?" They said, "We know him." "How is he?" They said, "He's well. That's his daughter Rachel coming with the sheep." While he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep. When Jacob saw Rachel and the sheep, he rolled the stone from the well and watered the flock. Jacob kissed Rachel and wept. Then he told her he was her cousin. She then ran and told her father. When Laban heard the news, he ran to meet Jacob. He embraced him, kissed him, and brought him to his house. Laban said, "You are my flesh and blood." After a month, Laban said to Jacob, "You shouldn't work here for free just because you're my relative. What should I pay you?" Laban had 2 daughters. The older one was Leah, and the younger one was Rachel. Leah had tender eyes, but Rachel had a good figure and a pretty face. Jacob loved Rachel and said, "I will work 7 years for the hand of Rachel." Laban said, "I'd rather give her to you than to another man. Stay and work for me." Jacob worked 7 years for Rachel, but he loved her so much they flew right by. Then he said to Laban, "I have completed my service. Give me my wife so I can sleep with her." Laban gathered everyone together for a wedding banquet, but that night he took Leah to Jacob, and he slept with her. It wasn't until the morning light that he realized it was Leah. Jacob confronted him. "What have you done to me? We had an agreement. Why did you trick me?" Laban said, "Around here, we don't marry off the younger daughter before the firstborn. Ratify your marriage to this one, and I'll give you the other one too, for 7 more years of service." Jacob agreed and completed the week of marriage rituals. Then he married Rachel and served Laban for 7 more years. But he loved Rachel more than Leah. Well, the shenanigans continue, eh, folks? So as we meet more of Jacob's extended family, we come to realize that Jacob's approach to life is not an anomaly in his family. His mother raised him the same way she was raised. This family, I would say, views the world as a zero-sum game. They don't understand that wealth can be created. They believe that the only way to obtain wealth is to take it from someone else. Now, in the world before modern economics, people did assume that. In the old mercantilism days, they did not understand that there was a way to achieve wealth. Now, they believed that there were honest ways to achieve wealth, but any honest way of achieving wealth was still a transfer of wealth from one person to another. There was no understanding that an exchange relationship could be mutually beneficial. From their perspective, there was a winner and a loser. Probably much the same way they approached shame. They believed every conversation produced a winner and a loser. That every conversation was an opportunity to show yourself as being better than someone else. And if you walked away not the better, then you walked away in shame. So that's kind of the worldview that we're dealing with here. And certainly that was a widespread worldview. I'm not saying anything about any particular groups of people. This is the way things were in large portions of the world. In fact, this was a much more advanced part of the world than a lot of other places at that time. So at any rate, they don't understand wealth can be created. They believe that it has to be taken from somebody else. So their goal is to get as much as they can. So this is a shrewd family. It's the way they do things. They're always trying to get ahead by tricking each other, and they try to trick each other within the family, let alone outsiders. You almost have to wonder if shrewdness. Yeah, Gene says it still is in some places. Yes, it is. There are still shame-based cultures, but thankfully most of the world understands now that, unless you're a Marxist anyway, you understand that wealth can be created. Marxists don't always seem to understand that. Anyway, so this is the way this family operates, always trying to trick people, always trying to get the better of somebody. They never approach a deal from the perspective of let's try to do the best thing for everybody. It's always, how can my side come out ahead? And they're willing to be dishonest to do that. So you almost got to wonder if this is a family value for them. Do they take pride in this? Because I've met people that do. I've met people who, the minute they meet you, when they're making their first impression, they'll tell you about some business deal they had or some event where they really pulled one over on somebody. As if, and they seem to think that other people are going to be impressed that they did this. And of course, I'm not impressed when people tell me that they made their fortune by swindling somebody, or at least by taking advantage of somebody. I'm not impressed by that. I would like to think that most people are not impressed by that, but some people seem to expect others to be impressed by that. And I'm wondering if this family is like that. I don't know that they are, but they sure behave like they are. So as I've said before in previous lessons, so far in the biblical narrative, God has not yet issued a set of moral commands to the people. No ethical system has been put forward. So far, the core of the religious faith is not, well, it is a way of life, but the way of life is not based around an ethical system. It's based around pure devotion to a single God, the Lord God of Israel. There is not yet a way of life that is attached to that other than just the basic tenets of monotheism. So absent an ethical system, I assume that they're living by the ethical system that was dominant in the land, assuming there was a dominant ethical system in the land. There might not have been. It might have been, a fragmented society. But so what is the purpose of this story then? Well, okay, so the ethics haven't been presented yet. They're going to be presented, right? So when we get into Exodus, and then into, and that later into Deuteronomy and into Leviticus, we're going to hear laws presented to the people. So right now we're learning about the world that these laws will be presented to. We're understanding the way of people, the culture that these laws are pushing back against. Remember, Genesis is all about beginnings. It's all about answering the question, why is the world the way it is? So to a very real degree, this is a story about why the law is the way it is. God didn't give Moses laws that didn't have a purpose. God didn't, think, oh, just in case they someday think about doing this. No. The law was presented to deal with issues that they were already having. So the story right now is telling us about all of these different issues. So the story itself never either condones nor condemns the way Laban treats his nephew Jacob. Jacob certainly doesn't like the way he's being treated, but if you look at the way Jacob acts in life, Jacob does the same kinds of things to other people. So whether or not Jacob likes it is irrelevant to him. He doesn't, he says he's been betrayed, but does he think that it's a sin that he was treated the way he was? I don't know for sure that he does. He might just think, oh, well, he got one over on me this time, so now I'll have to get one over on him the next time. In fact, the way the story plays out in the next couple of lessons will show that is exactly what he does, whether he's approaching it that way or not. So next week we're going to learn more about how this family does business, and we'll see that this is one toxic workplace that Jacob and Laban are working in. So, basically Jacob has joined Laban's family business at this point, and they are herders. These are people who keep flocks of sheep, and Jacob is going to help with this. He's going to build up his own herd. Now, of course, it's not just a toxic workplace, it's also just a toxic family. Jacob marries two sisters who are also his first cousins. Now, most Bibles tiptoe around this and never come out and say that they're cousins. They use the word relative or kin or my people. Most Bibles do not use the word cousin, but that is exactly what they are, right? So Laban is Rebekah's brother. Rebekah is Jacob's mother. So Laban is the brother of Jacob's mother, and Laban has two daughters. Those are Jacob's first cousins. Now, to be fair, I need to point out two things here. First, the expectation that people will marry within their tribe is what's driving this. And I skipped this part of the story, but Jacob's brother Esau did not marry within the tribe. He married women that were local to the place where they have relocated to, where they're in the promised land. Laban's not in the promised land. So Esau has married local women, and the family is very upset about this. It's like marrying foreigners from their perspective, and that was definitely frowned upon. They want to keep everything in the tribe. So you got to set aside all of our notions. It's hard to do that. They're living in a different culture, a different ethical system than we are. So they've got ideas about who's marriable and who's not that we would disagree with. I certainly disagree with. I adamantly disagree with their expectations of who's marriable and who's not. But they want to keep it within the tribe. And there is a legitimate goal to that, which is that they want to maintain a culture within the tribe. Remember, the tribe is also the governmental structure, okay? So when the government and the tribe when your family is your governmental structure, there's a safety in that, there's a security in that, and there's a solidarity in that is extremely useful. A lot of problems with it too. Okay, and this is one of them. If you're going to keep everybody within the same tribe, that means you're going to be inbreeding, because by definition, everybody in the tribe is in some way related by blood. So he's married his first cousins. And the other thing I want to point out is, in most states in the United States of America, it is against the law to marry your first cousin. Not every state. There are several states where it is perfectly legal, and the places where it is against the law. The first cousin taboo, from what I have read, is a newer taboo. It originated in the United States during the 19th century, around the time of the Civil War. Prior to that, in the United States and the rest of the world, people didn't bat an eye at marrying first cousins. It happened all the time. It wasn't considered strange, wasn't considered weird or icky or any of those things. It's only been in the last, I guess now going on 200 years, 150 years, that it has been considered taboo. And even then, it's really only still taboo in countries that have strong ties to the United States. The rest of the world probably isn't even aware that we have this taboo. It's not something that they're thinking about. So that part is not strange to him and to the people in this story. The fact that they're sisters, though, is hugely problematic. Now, there's no rule against it yet, but there will be a rule against it. And you gotta wonder, when God issues this rule, was he thinking about Jacob when he issued this rule? And interestingly, you'll find that the rule is that you cannot marry your wife's sister unless your wife has died. So if your wife dies, then your sister-in-law becomes fair game, but not until then. And yeah, it goes into that level of detail. Very different world we're talking about. So what does this story tell us about God? God does not appear explicitly in this story, in this part of it. God will appear very shortly. But in the part we heard today, God doesn't do anything, or does he? Because the story very much assumes that God is at work behind the scenes here as these events play out. It is no coincidence that the minute Jacob enters into the old country, he runs into his first cousin. That's not a coincidence any more than it was a coincidence in the last story when Isaac sent someone to go find a wife for Jacob, that he bumped right into Laban's family in that story. It's not a coincidence. God is putting people in each other's paths. We would call it today divine providence. You go looking for something and boom, it's the first place you look instead of the last place you look. Or I guess the first place you look is the last place you look, which hardly ever happens, right? So what does this story tell us about ourselves? People are naturally scuzzy. That's a very technical theological term, scuzzy. I think it's the correct word, though. People have always been dishonest. People have always experimented with what I will call doomed sexual triangles. Whether it's a lover's triangle or something like this, which is a sort of a notch up from the traditional lover's triangle. People have always this is not something that is new to our world today. And I know it's fashionable in some Christian circles today to rail against the hedonistic ways of modern American youth, but in reality, the average American citizen today behaves far better than any of the people we've encountered so far in the Bible. So I think that we're giving ourselves and our youth a bad rap when we say that. We've come a long way, actually, and we should celebrate that. Yet at the same time, we should not judge all of these biblical characters by a set of rules that they have not actually been given yet. And nor should we say, but whether they've been given rules or not, they should just know that certain things are not. If the Bible story tells us anything, it's that we do not just know what is right and wrong. We have to be told what is right and wrong. We have to be taught what is right and wrong. We're naturally self-interested. We're naturally selfish. Babies are born not altruistic. Babies are born concerned about when they're going to eat and sleep and be taken care of, and they have to be taught that mom has feelings too over a period of time. That the world is not just about feeding them; it's about lots of other things. They have to be taught that they have duties and obligations, and that there are rules. So there is no innate human consciousness. There's consciousness. Of course, there's a consciousness. There is no innate human conscience that prevents us from doing the wrong thing. Empathy is there. And empathy and compassion, those things in normal people are innate, and they will govern our actions to a degree. But they're not going to help us think through the consequences that laws are designed to help us do. So we cannot judge the ancient world by rules that they have not yet been given, just saying, they just should have known better. My New Testament professor in seminary said that we cannot just let our conscience be our guides, because we have trained our conscience, and our conscience is on our side. What does this story tell us about our relationship with God? Well, God makes plans, but we like to throw wrenches into those plans. I read today that there's a rabbinical tradition that says that God actually intended for Leah to marry Esau. So if Esau had gone home, Esau being the firstborn, would have married first. If Esau had gone home to get a wife like his father told him to, it would have been natural that that Leah would have been married to Esau. So when Jacob arrived, Rachel would have been the only one available. That's an interesting way of looking at the story. I don't know that Leah and Esau were a match made in heaven. I'm pretty convinced, though, that Jacob and Leah were not a match made in heaven. But then, of course, Laban really screws things up for everybody when he does this. So we've got a couple people contributing to the plan getting messed up. Esau by not going home to find a wife, Laban by tricking his son-in-law into marrying the wrong woman, his nephew into marrying the wrong woman, and you'll see that Laban has some more tricks up his sleeve as things go on. Now, so now you've got Jacob and Rachel and Leah, and they are in an undesirable situation. He's married to both of them. He really only wants to be married to the one. The other one knows that. It's a bad situation. How you react to bad situations matters, though. Matters a lot. And next week we're going to see how each of the three of them react to being in this bad situation. And we'll find that instead of making the best of a bad situation, they decide to take a bad situation and make it even worse. Aren't we good at that? All right. Christian news this week. From looking at religion news service, last week I talked about all the problems that Hillsong was having. Hillsong has had more problems since then, and I feel for everybody involved in this week's events at some level. Of course, I should say that everything is alleged, right? None of these cases have been decided, and all of them are civil cases, not criminal cases. But at any rate, the couple that co-founded the Boston campus since last week has resigned their positions. This seems to be their model, that they have couples running congregations. This couple that resigned was previously staff at the New York location, and the wife was one of the alleged victims of the senior pastor's misconduct at that congregation. And an internal investigation at the New York campus was leaked to the press, and when some of those details hit the press, the couple that is now running the Boston campus decided to step down. And yeah, I feel for them. I mean, they've spent their entire adult lives in this thing. I don't want to speculate on the degree to which anybody is culpable. It does seem to be the case that there was a toxic leadership culture in Hillsong in general, and in the New York campus in particular. And at least the husband was a part of that leadership structure at the previous congregation. So in a sense, it could be the case that he contributed to the environment that put his own wife at risk. I don't know that. But the more comes out about this, the worse it gets. And once again, these are things that can happen in congregations that do not have a denominational structure keeping them accountable. Now, Hillsong is a global church, but it's not a denomination. They're each campuses of the one church. So you've got the mother church in Australia, and then the way they see it, each of these local congregations is in fact just a campus, just different parts of one big congregation, even though now you could say that that's a denomination. and that the founder, Brian Houston, was actually, sort of the bishop of this denomination. But it doesn't have any of the structures in place that a denomination would have in place. It doesn't have, he sort of handpicked people to have all of these different roles, and that's when things go wrong, and people have lost faith in institutions. And, a friend of mine used to joke, Chuck Condra, if you ever see this video, he said, people have lost faith in organized religion, so they're turning to disorganized religion, as if that's a safer place to be. It is not. It's a much more dangerous place to be. I understand why people have lost faith in denominations after all the different scandals the denominations have had, but at least the denominations have structures in place that catch these scandals sooner or later, and then deal with them. They don't always deal with them the right way, but these independent megachurches, they don't deal with them at all. It all just blows up. Now, speaking of denominations having problems, if you think the United Methodist Church has problems, you got to really feel for the people in the AME Church right now. That's the African Methodist Episcopal Church, which is an offshoot of the Methodist Church. It's African American Church, as you would think from the name. And last week, their pension fund stopped making payments after it was discovered that it was broke. Almost $100 million has gone missing. It would appear that the head of the pension division was the only one who had access to and oversight over the money. It looks like he invested some of it into a venture capital firm that has since gone out of business, and that investment was lost. It appears that he invested some of the money by making loans to small businesses, and we don't know at this point why those businesses would have gotten loans from a pension fund. But so $100 million is missing. So all of these folks who have been putting money into the pension, of course, retirees who are depending on this pension fund for their livelihood, money's gone. And as I understand it, it was not insured. So, now of course, pension funds are not like FDIC insurance or something like that, but you can buy insurance for them. And finally, here locally, one of our local mega churches, which is the First Baptist Church of Glenarden, is doing virtual baptisms. People are baptizing their kids in the bathtub at home while they're on a virtual call with the congregation. They've done 91 baptisms this way so far. I'm not going to offer any commentary on that, because there was a time when I would have said I would never do communion. There was a time when I said I would never do online communion. What did I ended up doing? I ended up doing online communion during the pandemic. So, I don't know. Finally, Insight. That's the Methodist. It's not the official Methodist news agency. It's just the best Methodist news agency. They had an article about the bishop of the Bulgaria-Romania Conference of the United Methodist Church. As you know from previous reports, they voted unanimously to leave the United Methodist Church. And their bishop is very strongly of the opinion that that was not a legal action for them to take, that they had no legal right or basis to do that. He attempted to stop them from doing that. They did it anyway. It's really probably all moot. There's nothing we can do about it. They're gone. And if they were unanimous, then it's probably for the best that they're gone. And in other news in the Methodist world, I've told you all before that the Russian Conference of the United Methodist Church and the Ukrainian Conference of the United Methodist Church are both led by the same bishop, who is based in Moscow. And there is a general consensus right now that he is not going to be able to effectively lead both conferences. So on an interim basis, they're trying to find a way to have the Ukrainian conference moved under the direction of a different bishop until things I almost said go back to normal. We're not going to go back to normal until the war ends. So, until next week, do not forget to send me any questions that you've got. Oh, hey, Sandy. She's going to go back and start at the beginning. Thank you for saying hi, though. Until next week, do not forget to email me any questions that you have. So we're going to be moving forward into Genesis, into chapters. The next couple of weeks, we're going to be covering chapters 30 through 32, 33, something like that. We're going to look at Rachel and Leah as they go about building families, or a family, I guess you would say. We're going to look at Laban and his relationship with Jacob. Those are the things we'll be doing moving forward. If you have any questions, just shoot them to me. I don't see any questions or prayer concerns in the chat right now, so we're going to go ahead and move to our prayer. Let us pray. God, give me grace to accept with serenity the things that cannot be changed, the courage to change the things which should be changed, and the wisdom to distinguish the one from the other, living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, taking, as Jesus did, this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that you will make all things right if I surrender to your will, so that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever in the next. Amen. All right, brothers and sisters, thank you for joining tonight. Hope you're having a blessed Easter season. It is a season, not just a day. And I'll see you all next week. God bless.